All right, folks, we are back for another episode of the Inclusion Solution Live. And in this mini series, we are connecting with folks and just understanding how they are navigating this global pandemic. I'm excited because we have Ryan here. Ryan's a friend of the Winners Group. If y'all follow us on the Inclusion Solution blog, you already know that Ryan is a friend and a contributor, but Ryan is also a father, an advocate, a change agent, an educator, and of course, an everyday person living during this global pandemic. Ryan, I am excited that you are
Yeah,
here joining us.
thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
We're going to jump right in. As I shared, this is meant to just be a conversation for our listeners, all y'all out there to understand the range of impact this moment in time has had on people of different backgrounds. Ryan, I shared the cliff notes as it relates to sort of who you are, but I know you perhaps have even more to share. So I'm gonna turn it over to you and just ask you, who are you and what aspects of your identity have really influenced your experience during this time?
So first of all, thanks for having me. I absolutely love the Winners Group. I talk about it all the time and
Mhm.
talk about how you guys are really giving, the everyday person like myself the opportunity to be on a platform and to be on a stage, right? So thank you guys for that. Um, this time has been interesting, right? So the question you ask of my identity and how I am during these times has kind of shifted. Recently, my father passed away, and I realized in his passing that as much of myself that I thought I knew and that I thought I was solidified in, that I thought this is who I am and how I showed up, I realized in his passing that all of that was rooted in him.
Mhm.
And with him no longer being here, when I first saw that particular question, it was interesting because I'm in this space right now where I really don't know who I am. I
Mhm.
know the things that I do. I'm an educator, right? I'm a father, right? I claim to try to claim to be an activist in certain
Mhm.
realms in certain spaces, but I don't know who I am as an educator, right? Who I am as a father, right? Are those ideals and those beliefs, those practices, are they really my own, or were they solely tied up in what I thought I had to be to mirror who my father was, right? So, right now, if I had to describe who I was, I would say a blank canvas. I really am a blank canvas right now,
Mhm.
trying to figure out, how I show up in these certain moments. I know what I do, right? I know what I do for work. I know what I do in my spare time. I know I absolutely love and enjoy being a father, but who I am in those moments, I'm now, at 31 years old, really figuring out for myself what that really means for me.
And Ryan, thank you for even just feeling comfortable sharing with us about your dad and obviously what has been a journey. I imagine just like um, grieving and like fatherhood and even just, being someone who cares as an activist and advocate, this space and time like as another level of just like nuance and complexity to
Right,
that.
right,
And
right.
so I just wonder like what it's been like, just like what it's been like for you, whether it's relating to like the grieving process, whether it's relating to just like being a father, a co-parenting father at that.
Right. Yeah, so it was interesting. So right now we can't do funerals, right? So my father passed away. One of the first things that I thought about was like, man, what are we gonna do? you can't have a funeral, which honestly is probably what my father wanted. My father was a very private man. I had
Mhm.
somebody ask me, so the NAACP, he was active in the NAACP, and they did a cruise, a memorial cruise for him. So essentially what you do when you leave the funeral service and you do the processional over to the gravesite. The NAACP organized something like that for him, where we went from the school that he started at in the district to the school he retired from in the district, and then had like a
Mhm.
outside drive up memorial service. And so somebody asked me, they said, "Do you think your father would have wanted that to happen?" I'm like, "No, absolutely not." They said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Look, my dad was a private person, and he waited until COVID-19 to pass away. If that wasn't a clear
Mhm.
sign to us that he didn't want any kind of memorial service, right?" But just joking. So that's kind of how I've been handling the grieving process, right? Is finding moments to laugh. I've spent a lot more time with my mother, with my brother, with my sister,
Mhm.
and just making sure that those particular relationships that I still have while they're here, I definitely do everything I can to take advantage of them, and then being reflective, right? So I was from Roanoke, Virginia, but I was in Richmond, right? I went to Virginia Union in 2006, and I stayed in the Richmond area until 2017. And when I went home, for a lot of that time there, I was like, man, I need to get back to Richmond. Have I failed? I ended up back home, all of those things. Even though I had a good job, right? I was making decent money. Um, my kids were healthy the whole nine, and I felt like I failed. But it's now in these reflective moments, it's good to see how things line up for you, right? Because my father ended up going from being okay to dead, right? In a span of 3 years. And me moving back home gave me the opportunity to really be able to spend time with him. And the night before he passed, I had the opportunity to go to the nursing home and spend the night with him. And so, for me, the grieving process hasn't been as difficult as I thought it would be. Um, because I kind of accepted my dad had been sick for maybe about a year now, and I kind of got a chance to spend time with him, and then being home, and um, everybody who's been showing love and outpouring of support from people who we worked with 30, 40 years ago. Hearing
Mhm.
those stories has been great. Family. um, a lot of times people say that they that we hate that we only get together at funerals, right? And I used to be somebody who said that. And in my dad passing, I've completely done a 360 on that statement, right? Because when you look at matriarchs and patriarchs of your family, they're what they did was bring your family together.
Mhm.
And so for me, even it's good to see that even in passing, they're still able to do that. They're still able to bring family, friends, community. They're still able to kind of have that spirit about them that rallies everybody together. And so it's been great. Had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with family. And now the difficult part about it was being is my kids don't live with me, right? So I'm a co-parent. My daughter is in Virginia. I'm in Virginia, but she's about 4 hours from me, and my son is all the way in Brooklyn, right, in Brooklyn, New York. So
Mhm.
my daughter actually got a chance to come down for the memorial service, but my son didn't, right? Just with everything with the COVID-19 going
Yeah.
on in New York being so,
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
being hit so heavy up there. So that's kind of been difficult, right? That's kind of been difficult to not. I haven't physically seen my son in 2 months,
Mhm.
maybe 2 months. And so I went from seeing him every month to, the last 2.5 months, I haven't seen him at all physically. He hasn't physically been with me at all. So, and so for him not to be able to be here for the last couple of days of my dad living, and at 4 years old, yeah, we FaceTime with my dad, but he doesn't
Right.
really, that being able to have that physical personal interaction. So that's been kind of difficult, um, to kind of move and navigate through that piece of it. But like I said, I've been pleasantly surprised with how the grieving process has been for me so far, right? And I think it's tied to the fact that I think my father still was able to do what he always has done, right? Do even
Mhm.
in his passing, he was still able to, have people out there smiling, have people come together,
Mhm.
right? Have people encouraging each other, right? Have people showing positive energy, affirming each other. All of those things were still happening even around his passing, and it's still happening now, right? It's still happening now, even 2, 3 weeks after he's no longer with us. We're still receiving love and support and calls and texts and all of those things. So it's been in the midst of the COVID-19. Um,
Mhm.
it's still been a reason to be thankful, right?
One of the things you mentioned earlier was, the your role as an educator and an advocate. And I certainly can't have you on here without bringing up a post that you wrote for us a little while a little while ago, folks.
Folks that got me in trouble, a lot of trouble.
Really? Is it is
Man,
it is
what?
is it off limits, Ryan?
No,
If
go
y'all
ahead.
want
Let, let,
if
let
y'all
me
want
hear
to
it.
if y'all need some context, listening, Ryan, head over to the blog. Ryan wrote for the Inclusion Solution maybe a few weeks ago, and he talked about the global pandemic in education, specifically as it relates to how Black students experience the education system at large. And so it's actually something that we have been sharing with. We have clients, education clients, and I actually have a session tomorrow on race and color in education. We've been sharing that as a resource for people to refer to. Um,
You made me
and
blush.
so in the context of now, right? Because I think Virginia, y'all shut down. Did y'all shut down schools altogether, or y'all
Completely.
doing distance learning
Completely. No,
completely?
shut. Well, no. Okay, yeah, we got distance learning, but the
Okay, so
buildings are
y'all
shut down. Buildings are
got you,
shut
got
down.
you. Okay, cool. So y'all are still maintaining sort of distance learning. And so I just wonder what your thoughts are. Just kind of like as an educator, as someone who is committed to centering Blackness, which I think is necessary in this space and time, especially as we just like learn more and more about how this pandemic has uncovered many inequities in our system. And so um, I just wonder like your thoughts on just like the state of education, state of being Black in education,
Right,
state of
right,
like just sort of where we are and
right.
what that means in the context of progress and then just your work. One thing I didn't mention, y'all, and y'all see in his, and we'll drop this in the notes too, is that Ryan is an educator but also a consultant. So interested in your thoughts around just like race in this
Yeah,
moment in time.
yeah. So the post that you're referencing, and to start off, anything you want to ask is completely on limits, right? It's completely fair game. I don't mind answering, right?
Folks are gonna want to read this post now, like, wait, what he say?
and
Yeah, he's colored.
and
He caught up
the
the whole
way
system.
the way in which I delivered it to you guys was the, for lack of a better term, watered down version of the post. The first one I had a person who I respect very much say, if you put this out, you're gonna get fired. No
Okay.
questions asked about it. So the one I ended up putting out was one that was more still edgy, right? Still edgy, but maybe provided an opportunity for people to actually digest it and read it, right? But so the state of education right now, to me, specifically talking about Black and brown students, right, is no different than what it's been for 10, 20, 30, 40,
Mhm.
50 years, right? And what led to my post that I wrote was I made a statement on Facebook that said, when schools shut down, I pretty much was saying that, hey, even though schools are shut down, let's be honest and not act like schools for Black and brown kids were good anyway. they
Mm-hmm.
may be better off at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
They may be better off at home with people who love them, who care about them, who are going to pour into their lives, right? And that's not to say that certain teachers that they have don't, but the reality of the matter is, if you're a white teacher from the suburbs, you can't, as you mentioned, center blackness in a way for this black student from the inner city, right? Or for a black student in general, wherever they're from, right? You can't really do that, and we're seeing it play out in this pandemic as well. When you look at the numbers of, so one of the things that I was a special education teacher, and so one of the things that I see, the data, the statistics, the articles that I read, is how special education students as a whole are suffering during this pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, one thing we know about special education is the disproportionate number of black and brown students who are in special education. So if special education is suffering as a whole, disproportionately, black and brown students are suffering due to special education. We talk about poverty, right? Food deserts, where we understand that many of our students come to school and the only meals that they get, breakfast and lunch, come from the school, right? Which is a symptom of a larger problem, right? But they come to school to get that breakfast and their lunch. Disproportionately, poverty affects black and brown students, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how many who's disproportionately being affected by not being able to go to school during this time, right? And it's all stuff. What was shocking to me, Brittany, honestly, when I put this post up on Facebook originally, nothing I said
Had it already been said,
hadn't already been said, right?
proven by
Nothing I
data.
pointed out to, nothing I pointed out hadn't already been pointed out for years. And we can get into. I talk in an article about how, post Brown v. Board, the many how many we saw how many black principals we lost, black administrators we lost, black teachers we lost. Just the overall effect. Not that it's just had on the students, but the entire educational system as a whole. And I think this is really the time for us to begin to look at alternative models of education, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like if we really go out here and try to open up our own schools, right? If we and that are funded by us, right? That the curriculum is designed by us, and of course, these are things that can't necessarily, we're not going to be able to educate every black and brown student in the world in our own schools overnight. But I think oftentimes we use that as an excuse to never even begin the process of seeing, how much of a reality or a possibility that actually is, right? So, I think my easy assessment of what education looks like right now for students who look like me, who look like you, who look like my daughter, who look like my son, who look like your son, is it sucks. It sucks. The education is horrible for them right now, right? The curriculum is horrible for them. The amount of resources that are funneled into a school, if you're in a school in a quote unquote hood, because of the tax bracket around your school, the amount of resources that are, financial resources that are put into your school, even in particular schools where you have a higher rate of poverty. That's where we got first year teachers, right? There's no reason I should go into a building, and in this particular building, there are, 92% of the teaching staff are first, second, third year teachers, right? That would never happen in a predominantly white school. Just wouldn't happen. Just wouldn't happen, right? And we're ruining careers. We're ruining careers because you're putting teachers in these predicaments. You're putting teachers in these classrooms who don't have the classroom management experience. And I went through a teacher education program. The classroom management courses and teacher education programs are useless, right? They're,
Mm-hmm.
they're useless. They give you a bunch of theoretical knowledge and out the book, but until you step foot in a school building,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what your classroom management style is, what it's going to look like, different things of that nature. And so we're throwing these teachers into these situations, um, that for life experience they may not be equipped to deal with.
Or
Um,
cultural, or just cultural proficiency in general. They just don't
right,
have the level of cultural
right,
competence or exposure
right.
to, yeah.
to be able to be able to handle it, right? And I've had teachers who have come to me and have said to me, who have questioned if they're capable educators. And I'm looking at them and telling them, hey, this has nothing to do with whether or not you're a capable educator. You've just been dealt, for lack of a better term, a bad hand, right? Black, white, and whatever the race, nationality of a teacher is,
Mhm.
you just been dealt a bad hand. And administrators, we see it with administrators, right, all the time, where you're a black administrator and you're put in a particular school that hasn't been the greatest school for 6, 7, 8 years. You're put over there and you're given a year to try to fix it, right? It's Dick Gregory has a famous line where at the end of everything he says, he always says it's a game, right? It's all a game. And I feel like we are now starting to come around to how we play the game, right? What
Mhm.
that game looks like, right? What we ask for, what we fight for. And so that was really what my post was trying to get at, is that this situation here is all a game, right? It's all a game. Yeah, and there's nothing that, I don't claim to be the thought leader in this regard, right? This is all stuff that I'm just analyzing for myself as an adult now and
Mhm.
restating, right? Trying to keep it, on the top of mind for conversation.
And so yeah, it's interesting because I even find myself, especially now that my brother is here, more consistently, and so I'm experiencing this like distance learning.
Right,
I'm experiencing like just like the inequity and just like availability of technology,
right,
especially
right,
when they have
right,
expectations around this distance learning. And so I think this, or no, not even think that this pandemic has just exacerbated it all.
right,
As a matter of fact, your boy Dallas Dance, somebody I was reading a shout out to him. So for the readers, Dallas Dance is one of the former not the readers, listeners, superintendents of where I am, Baltimore
right.
County. And so it was actually during his time, evidently, that he
Okay.
made sure everybody had
Yeah, yeah, I saw that. I did
laptops.
see that. Yeah, I did
Yeah,
see that.
and so
I did see
somebody
that.
the other day was like, pretty much like just trust black leadership, like
Yeah,
because
yeah.
in
And
hindsight, so
think
right
about
now
how
it's like
visionary he had to be for that, right?
every
The
student,
vision
right?
behind that, every student,
Right?
right?
Every student, and so you juxtapose that next to our Baltimore City.
Right,
We're what, like a month into this, and they're still trying to get
right,
computers out
right,
to students. Some
right,
students are using like packets, right? In
right,
some of the most like impoverished and forgotten areas of the city,
right,
state even, they're just not they just don't have capacity.
right,
Um so yeah, and that has been, I mean, that has even, I was sharing with somebody that I've always like owned my identity of like as like a sister and caretaker, but I swear like in this moment in time that has probably been exacerbated mainly
yeah,
because I'm just like frustrated.
right,
Like even down to um like the emotional. So I think that there is a different skill set required for like leaders and teachers to even like engage with students virtually, like how to
right,
speak with them via
right,
email, like nicely in a way where they feel like empowered and not
right,
necessarily like spoken down to because you don't know what's going on at home, like
right.
denigrated because they don't understand like how to work, certain technology, or even just how to be in this moment in
Even the piece
time.
of letting you into your home now, like with this virtual
Yeah.
learning thing, you know, I may be in a home environment where, I'll give you an example. We were getting ready to start doing home visits in the district that I work in, right? And I was
Mhm.
talking to a student, and I asked her, "Hey, I just, I want to come by and visit your home, right? Come talk to your mom, your dad, whoever you live with, and just see where you live at." And she said no. And originally, I was like, why does she want me to come by her house? And I talked to her a little bit more and came to find out that she was actually trying to protect me because she felt like the neighborhood she came from wasn't the best neighborhood and didn't want her teachers to come over there. Right. So, once I, talk to her a little bit more and let her know that, hey, it has nothing to do with your neighborhood. You don't have to be a product of that, right? I come from some of those same places, right? And I don't mind coming to visit you. We eventually got to a point to where she was okay with it. But when we talk about distance learning, that's me as a student, me as a parent. So my daughter with distance learning right now has video chats with her teacher. As a parent, as a student, I have to now let you into my space like I've never had to before, right? I now have to and that's a whole different type of feeling that
Yeah.
that comes with. It's different, parent. If I'm a parent, I can come to parent teacher conference. I can show up to the school. You can send the work home, and I can make sure that it gets done. That's completely different than, hey, I'm gonna set up this camera in my home and let you into my private, personal space. Especially from a population, from us, where we're constantly judged and looked down upon and different things of that nature, right? That's a lot to ask somebody to do, to now let you into my home, let you into my space, in that way, right? So, the distance learning, I think you have to do it, right? We can't just not educate children, right?
Yeah.
You have to figure out how you do that, but we have to really take into account all the different ways this thing this thing plays out, right? Even for our workers on the front lines, right? The nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, police officers, all of them, their kids, right? Who may be at home with them to do distance learning while they have to be out here fighting this thing, right? When we talk about poverty, you know, what do you do for that family who has to work 2 or 3 jobs, right? Or now is, how do we talk to the student who comes back whenever school does reopen, and when they come back to school and they've now had to experience the heartache of a parent being let go, or they just spent the last 3 months with no lights, right? Or no food, or different things of that nature. Have some places that are trying to suspend the cutting off of utilities and different things of that nature. But I know for a fact that hasn't reached every single place, right? I know families who are experiencing utilities maybe not being there anymore. Even if they're not cutting off the utilities, they for sure ain't buying no food, right? And so what when these students come back to school, what does that look like, right? For our students who I'm working with somebody now about doing some virtual mentoring, because we got kids who when you come to school, the only person in your life who speaks positively to you is your mentor, who you depend to go to that. You may not depend to go to that school building for food. You may not depend to go to that school building for education. You may depend on that school building because the one person in your life who loves you is there. That mentor is there. That mentoring program that you're involved in is there. And now you don't get that daily touch anymore. You don't get that constant interaction anymore, right? So, what does it look like for us to even move to doing some mentoring virtually and different things of that nature, right? To keep that social emotional bond going.
That's actually a really good point, and I wonder. I don't know from experience, but I wonder what or how like schools are gonna address what is gonna be like trauma. And so whether that trauma is because their basic needs weren't met, whether that trauma was like just dealing with like grief, whether that trauma is coming back to school and noticing a bunch of your teachers may not be there. You know what I mean? Or even like, friends. I do wonder like how it's a lot, like how schools, how teachers, how counselors, I mean parents, the work around like the social and emotional stuff. Like how do we make sure we're even like holding enough space and developing solutions for that? And so that being said, I wonder like what from your perspective, like what do you want to come from this pandemic? Like if you had, whether it's in your personal life, whether it's in the community, whether it's like what you do in the education space, like
Right.
what do you want life reimagined to be?
So I'll try to quickly touch each one, right? From an education perspective, what I hope comes out of this is an honest conversation um, from communities of color around what education actually looks like for our children and what we want education to look like for our children, right? I think that um, a lot of us may not even know what we want education to look like for our children, right? What types of things do we want them involved in, right? Do we want them involved in auto mechanic, agriculture education, urban agriculture education, different things of that nature, right? So what does education look like for our children, right? What do we want their world? If I asked parents that question, reimagine out of this pandemic, what would education for your son or your daughter look like, right? And so I think that we have to really now at this time start having that conversation, right? What is education going to look like for us when we get back for our students who are in high trauma situations? What does that look like when they get back in these school buildings, right? Um, from a from a personal perspective, um, I hope people are really taking this opportunity to reconnect with family, right? Reconnect with friends, people you love, right? Really take this opportunity to get to know somebody, right? Get to know somebody in a different way that you have never known them before, right? Really take this opportunity to just be okay with being still, right?
Mm.
To be okay with that's one of the most difficult things for me, right? I always have to be doing something. I have to be here. I have to be there. You know, I went from working 9 to 5 to meetings in the evenings 3 or 4 days a week to, you know, hanging out with friends, and then it went to nothing at all, right? And now I'm just now getting around to being okay with the fact that I may wake up at 8 and have nothing to do until 3, and that's okay. That's okay, right? And I don't have to fill that space with like I see people all the time with this stuff where they say if you don't come out on the other end of this with a business idea, you wasted this time. No, maybe you have a business idea. Maybe that heart attack that you were getting ready to have because of the stress levels in your body, you've reduced that
Mhm.
because you've taken time to yourself, right? You've taken time to pour into yourself, right? Um, maybe that relationship that was strained with a parent, right? With a sibling, with a child, with a grandparent. You know, maybe that relationship on the other end of this has been repaired, right?
Mm.
Because I know now, very much so that when somebody's gone, you never get an opportunity to have another conversation with them again in person, right? Now, if you're a spiritual person and you believe that you get the opportunity to have those conversations in a different way, but in person, you'll never get the opportunity to have those conversations again. So I hope that we really begin to commit back to um, just being humans again and building healthy relationships with people, right? Genuine, positive relationships. And as a father, um, I hope that this time produces more resiliency in fathers, right? I hope that this time produces new innovative ways for fathers who may be in my situation to where your kids don't
Mhm.
live with you full time to stay actively engaged. I'm getting ready to start doing FaceTime yoga sessions with my daughter, right?
Real nice.
Um, yeah, so so even though I don't get to, she doesn't get to come as much because of this, we can do yoga on FaceTime. And this is actually something she told me she was doing, right? And I was like, "Can I do it with you too?" She said, "Yeah, right." And so finding ways to stay plugged in with my son via, via technology and the different things that we have. Um, and another thing that I'm getting ready to start doing is I'm getting ready to start writing a weekly letter that I'm going to mail to my kids. Um,
Okay.
just to, tell them how my week was, right? Ask them how their week was. If they write back, cool. If they don't, cool as well, right? Whatever, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. But I hope that too. This also is an opportunity. What I would like for fathers to start doing during this time is telling those stories, right? Um,
Mm.
because what I've learned is I share a lot of stuff about my journey of fatherhood on Facebook and Twitter, all these different places, and I've done it more so recently. And I was talking to somebody the other day who asked me, do you do that for sympathy? Do you do that for praise? Do you do that for any of those reasons? And I was like, the main reason, the only reason why I do it, I can care less about the praise or the sympathy if something's going wrong, any of that, is I had a conversation with a gentleman who got hooked up to me through a mutual friend. And he was going through a very, very difficult time. And as much as we encourage Black men to go seek, mental health counseling services and all that, I'm Black men go do that, right? The reality of the matter is we don't. We don't do it. We don't do it for whatever the reasons may be. We don't do it. And if we didn't have that mutual friend, he would have never been able to have this conversation with me that he said he
Mhm.
needed at that time. And so whatever your story may be as a father, I want people to share those publicly, because you may have somebody who's going through something who just so happens to scroll by your news feed, read what you're going through and say, okay, I'm not alone in this, or be encouraged that they can get to this particular place, right? And just have the opportunity to keep growing. So that's what I would like to come out of these pandemic in those areas, right? It's just a recommitment. And I think all of those things is you as an individual recommitting to yourself,
Mhm.
recommitting to the things that you hold true to yourself, to the things that you feel identify you as a person, identify you as in the spaces that you show up, and really embracing those things, right? And not running from those things.
I have another question,
Yeah.
and just like for the folks who, as we well know, for different reasons, like will or have experienced like grief in this moment in time.
Hmm.
And so I know you shared a little bit at the top about how you've been able to like find or identify like the silver lining and opportunities to reflect and experience joy and like memories and who your father was. And I also wonder if you have anything else you may share for people who are or will find themselves experiencing grief during this pandemic.
Hmm. Embrace it fully, right? And embracing it may look a little different for everybody, right? But what I mean by embrace it is embrace the fact that it's happened. I think that you have to accept the fact that this tragedy has happened, right? Or I hate to call it a tragedy, but that this particular situation has happened, right? Whatever it may be, somebody passing, um, you may be being laid off from a job, whatever it is, really embracing the fact that it's happened, because and I think this with everything, until you really embrace it, you can't move past it, right? You can't begin to heal and move to the next phase of what life has. And I think we look at life, to me, the wrong way, right? I think that we look at life from this lens of what am I doing while I'm here, for the moments of while I'm here. And I don't think that's true anymore, especially with my father just passing away, and seeing and hearing all of the stories and all of the memories being shared. I think we what we do in life right now is for those moments when we're no longer here, so those people can have comfort in those stories, in those memories. And so I think that you have to, if you're, the tragedy that you're suffering is the one that I just did, share those stories. Share those stories. If they don't have those stories, make them up. Anybody gonna know you made it up, right? But share them, right? Find something to be happy about, and really embrace them, right? Tell those stories, share those memories, pass down that knowledge, um, and really lean into and embrace the fact that this person is no longer with you. And then ask yourself, what would they want me to do right now? I know for a fact 100% my dad would not want me to be sitting around crying over the fact that he's no longer here, right? My dad would be asking me, are you feeding children meals? Are you trying your best to make sure that these kids are still getting their mentoring services? Are you doing your best to make sure that the education that these kids are getting is still a decent education? Are you volunteering in this particular organization, right? All of these things is what my father would be asking me, am I doing, right? And so now in his passing, that's what I'm trying my best to do, to continue to do, right? Um, is to live life the way he would have lived it. So if you're going through a difficult time, you're in a grieving process right now, fully embrace it, lean into it. Don't run from the people who want to be there for you. That's been my biggest thing right now. Frat brother of mine just celebrated a birthday yesterday, and we did a drive-by party for him, so to speak, right? And he was on FaceTime with another frat brother of mine, and he came out to the car, and my frat brother looked on the FaceTime and said, "Man, where you been? And I've been trying to call you, right?" And I've been in a lot of instances not responsive to phone calls, to text messages, to different things of that nature. And once I started to actually embrace those calls, embrace those text messages, it did so much for me. But I was running from the feelings of what those conversations may bring, not knowing that those conversations brought everything I needed to be okay. They brought everything I needed: reassurance, encouragement, support, right? They brought everything I needed. So definitely don't run from those conversations. Have them. If you end up crying in the middle of the conversation, cry. Tell them you got to call them back. Hang up, call them back 10 minutes later. Text back, right? Have that conversation. Lean on those people, right? You don't have to be so strong that you do this all on your own, right? You have those people there, those people who want to support you, those people who want to love you, those people who want to encourage you, embrace you, empower you. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of it. This is the perfect time to take advantage of it, right?
That's so good, Ryan. We were at the top of all this happening as a team. We were differentiating like social distancing from just like
Right.
physical distancing, and that we should still
Right.
like maintain connection.
Right.
And I think that is so key. Especially I can imagine, so especially while grieving, and while we all just experience like what is the reality. We about to wrap
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's anything that you want to share about your experience, your story, your reality that you haven't shared already.
Um, man. So I kind of shared this, uh, but I'll share it again. It hasn't been shared frequently. But and I guess I just shared it with you earlier on this call, actually. And this can also be used for other people, I think. But um, don't wait until you're 31 to realize that your identity, in a lot of ways, is wrapped up in somebody else,
Mm,
right? And not in a negative way. My father was a great man, right? Um, my father was a great man who I love, admire, respect, cherish, and if I could become half the man he was, then half the father he was, half the educator he was, half the activist he was, right? I think I would have done something great with my life. However, I would have made a more concerted effort to root those things in myself, right? To those characteristics of him, to root those in myself, right? And so I think that what I'll share is that I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am, right? Again, I know what I do, but my story as an educator, my story as a father, my story as a son, my story as a brother, my story as a friend. I'm learning what kind of friend I'm really learning now, and this what kind of friend I am to people, right? Um, and all of these different things. I really don't know who I am, and anybody who knows me knows that I think I know everything, right?
mhm.
And so, to be at a place right now where it's like, man, I don't know anything about anything. It's been different. Yeah.
um, y'all, in real like everyday life fashion,
Look,
there would have
embrace it. Embrace it.
been my child is knocking on the door, and that's cool because we're about to wrap up this anyway. Um, Ryan, it has been wonderful connecting with you and
Same here.
using
Same
this
here.
as a way to, again, just amplify different experiences during a global pandemic. Folks, we'll drop everything in the comments. This is real life. We'll drop everything in the comments, all the links, and how to get in contact with Ryan. As a matter of fact, Ryan, you want to just share how folks can get in contact with you?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Facebook, Ryan Anthony Bell, or at the Black Father Family on Facebook, at the Black Father Family on Instagram, or you can email me at thebelleffectinfo@gmail.com.
All right. And you can obviously follow Ryan too and the rest of his posts on Inclusion Solution.
Thank you so
Until
much.
next time.
All right, have a good one.